Good morning. Welcome to the August 28, 2017 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If you would stand with us, please. Commissioner Chip Pinion will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Chip.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day and for your love for us. We thank you for allowing us to come and do business of the county. We ask you for wisdom and knowledge and understanding that we need to make the best decisions, Father. We are mindful today of those down in the Houston area, Father, that are being affected by the hurricane, Father. We pray you be with those down there that are affected by it and for all those that are helping to assist those. Father, we just lift them up to you in prayer and ask you to be with them, comfort them during this time. Father, we also pray for our military, continue to be with them all across the world, serving to keep us safe. We thank you for them. We also thank you for the safety of those that work for us right here in our own backyard. We ask you to continue to guide and keep them safe on a daily basis. Again, Father, we love you and we thank you. We appreciate this day. We ask you just to help us during this time. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Call the roll, please, Gail.
Rhonda Allen. Here. Jim Averwater. Here. Lee Bogle. Here. David Jones. Here. Mike Cush. Craig Lynch. Here. Chip Pinion. Here. Charlotte P. Here. Pettis Reed. Here. Mike Vaught. Here. Jeff Phillips.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Gail. We have no minutes to review. And we have one item that's been withdrawn, item 6B 17-2060 Buchanan Estates. We'll not be hearing that today. Item 6A, items that are submitted for preliminary plan approval. 6A1, item 16-1023 Autumn Grove subdivision revisions. 6 lots, 11.3 acres, zoned RM, located off West Gum Road. Julie O'Gwen and LaDonna Miguel are the applicants. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This preliminary plan was originally approved by the Commission back in November of last year. That plan is included within your agenda materials as well as the new one under consideration tonight. The applicant has made some modifications to the street, which resulted in a minor decrease in lot area for some of those lots. That's the reason this is coming back to you today, because the subdivision regulations consider any reduction in lot size to be a major revision to the plan, which does require a reapproval from the Planning Commission. Individual lot grading plans will be required for each of these lots due to the proposed rain gardens that they're showing for stormwater management. There are water line improvements proposed along West Gum Road, but the line cannot currently accommodate a hydrant, so a fire hydrant waiver and residential sprinkler systems will be required for this development, as was originally approved back in November of last year. The comments that were submitted, there were several. Really, those comments have been addressed. There's just one that still needs to be taken care of, and really it's just more of a typographical error is all it is. There's regarding the front setback, the applicant wants a larger front setback than what county requirements require, which is fine. There's just a small typo there they need to fix. So beyond that, this plan appears to be in good order, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
We have a motion. Did I hear a second? And a second to approve item 16-1023 Autumn Grove subdivision. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6A2, item 17-1011 Davenport Station subdivision, section 3. It's a southern PUD, 438 lots on 275 acres on PUD located off of Shelbyville Highway. BMCH Tennessee is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This property, and this probably look familiar to the commissioners, this went to the Planning Commission not too terribly long ago for a PUD zoning. It was originally approved back in 2007, but it has had various modifications made over the years, the most recent, again, being just this past year, just a few months ago, back in June. It was approved at the Board of Commissioners meeting. The plat on the screens you can see, and also on your iPads, really is dealing more with what I would call the southern portion of the development. When you look at the screen, it's, where Mike is circling in that area right through here. One of our comments was that we wanted to see the preliminary plan concentrate on this. This northern area is all bound by the area, or I'm sorry, bound by the original conditional use permit that was approved back in 2007. It doesn't need to be included on this. After discussion with the applicants and their design engineer, they understand what we're looking for now. This will be modified to show that, but the plan itself is in pretty good order, but it's really just this southern portion down here is really what we're considering tonight. This contains, again, the area zone PUD. This layout is consistent with what was approved in the pattern book back in June of this year. For the most part, our comments have been addressed. They just need to update the site data to accommodate what we were just talking about as far as really just reflecting the southern portion of the PUD area as opposed to the rest of the development. With that, really, again, it's just some minor comments that need to be addressed. A couple state plane coordinates on the master plan and just updating the site data. But beyond that, this plan's in good order. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
If I remember correctly, the question, one of the major issues was this with the traffic coming down that hill. Those turning lanes were required by the state, correct?
There were going to be turning lanes, I can show them, yeah.
All right. They're going to add a turn lane at this main drive coming in, and then also there'll be one at Rucker. The thought was to wait until we see what's coming with the commercial development up here before they put a turn lane onto Oak Meadows. But the first two roads will have a turn lane on Davenport Drive, and then this, what was one time called Rucker Road, they'll have to change that name, right? Yeah. They'll have to change this name, but this intersection will also have a turn lane. But the thought was to wait and see what these will be to know exactly what we'll need for a turn lane up here.
Now, at the county commission, they did condition approval upon turn lanes if allowed by the state at the Oak Meadow Drive. That's something I know the applicant's still working through, and it doesn't affect what they're looking at on this section, because eventually that will be, eventually that'll all connect, but right now, this portion we're looking at right now is not part of that, so, but
Mike,
that's.
would you refresh our memory on the time frame on a red light, stoplight?
They'll have to do a warrant signal analysis, and it will probably, there's a threshold that they'll have to run through the calculations, and it will require a traffic signal, but each section will evaluate it and see if a signal is needed at this intersection. But the first section is right in here. The second section is in this area, but it hasn't tripped that requirement yet. But each section will look at it will it need a warrant for a traffic signal?
By you?
Yes, and the state,
So, a few years down the road, 2 years, 3 years?
Yes, sir, it could be. It depends on how the lots are sold in the market. It continues. It could be shorter than later.
Okay.
On those turning lanes, are those required on both sides of the road? I mean, will there be in the median going toward Murfreesboro also?
The first one coming in will have a northbound left turn lane on Shelbyville Highway turning in here, and then a southbound right-hand lane coming in as well. And then most likely this one will have the same configuration here. Northbound left going into the development, and then a southbound right going into development as well. They'll have to work with us on that. That was one of our comments. They need to address, there's a ridge. Let me turn the zoning off. Kind of a little bit of a ridge through here that some of this drainage is heading to the south. They'll have to address that with stormwater management areas or a ditch and a pipe back to another area. But that's one of our comments, is to address the drainage.
Which do you prefer?
It could be handled either way. It's going to be tricky because they have their drip dispersal area back here. If you've got a ditch or a pipe that, limits the area that they could use through here. So either way, if they put a pond in this low area here or, piped it to an area back here by the river and put a pond back in here, either way would work. So.
Motion to approve, subject to staff comments then.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-1011 Davenport Station subdivision. Other questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6A3, item 17-1014, Northside Estates, Phase 1A, and resub of Lot 30, Phase 1. Revisions to the original approval, 139 residential lots and 3 common area lots on 79 acres on RM located off Las Casas Highway. Oakland Developments are the applicant. This includes a waiver to the minimum intersection offset distance, which should be interesting. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This preliminary plan was originally approved by the Commission back in July of 2015. This subdivision has been under development. The applicant's proposing to develop 4 additional lots, lots 61 through 64 that you see on the plan on your iPads, on area that was previously reserved for the step soils area. A portion of that area was disturbed during the construction of the subdivision, so therefore couldn't be used for soils area anymore, so they're trying to get a few lots out of it. The applicant has attempted to make the 150-foot minimum offset distance between, at the time, it was called Kinzer Court and Bourne Lane, by redrawing Lot 30, but was only able to get approximately 139 feet. That's actually better than what the original plan looked like. I think it was about 111 or something to that effect. So they did get a little more room out of it. There's some other issues on here that we did want to bring to your attention, and namely that area in front of the step lot, right there where Mike is highlighting. Originally, that area connected to the detention area further to the northwest. With the development of this road, as they're showing it, there's no connection anymore, and that lot is essentially by itself and doesn't meet any kind of zoning requirement. That's nothing that we can really grant a waiver to. Now, if they could somehow redesign that just a little bit, just to give a connection, it doesn't have to be a very big one. I'd be happy with a foot or two, just as long as it had something back there that connected the two, then I think we could live with that. But for more discussion on the offset distance between those 2 roads, I'll let Mike handle that part of it.
And what Doug is talking about is the 2 offset intersections by our rule needs to be at least 150 feet apart. And that's to prevent any left turning movements that could potentially conflict, give them enough separation so 2 people turning out and turning left at the same time would have time to stop and adjust. But there's more to that than just the separation between here. When they moved this road over a little bit, they moved it into this low area where they had a couple inlets, and I don't know if you can see it on this design, but once this intersection slid over a little bit more, it's gotten into this low area, and you'll have an inlet sticking out essentially in a travel lane, and will need to be adjusted somehow. And then also, The drainage, it seems to be needing a lot of work. I know this is just a preliminary phase, and we'll address a lot of that on the construction phase, but my thought was to avoid the proximity of this other intersection by either bringing Mockingbird down and cul-de-sacing it here, or there's a high point right in here, have a road come up through here and cul-de-sac it here. So we won't have to worry about reconfiguring all this drainage. You could slide these two lots over to the east a little bit more, and then have Lot 30 can be this long strip can be part of Lot 30 as well. So if I had my druthers, I'd rather see it come here or here. This is just a little too close, and it's messing with the drainage in here, which I think is going to be an issue in the future.
Design engineer, I assume, is aware of all this, that
Yes,
there's some
we've
things
made
we still need to address.
our comments known, and it looks like Mr. Bill's here to discuss his follow-up.
And also, while Bill's coming up, I will say that we did distribute a letter from Bill, you should have it on your tables here, about the offset intersection.
Good morning, Chairman Phillips, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Bill Huddleston, president of Huddleston Steel Engineering here in Murfreesboro. Appreciate staff's comments. We've been working with them to make the offset as much as possible. We're able to get 139 feet centerline offset between the two intersections. That's 11 feet short, so that's why we're asking for the waiver. In our waiver request, we're providing the maximum distance possible. This is a subdivision that's already been built. We're getting ready to record the final plat, and now we're trying to add these 4 lots in. The reason why you have that offset is in case you have left turns coming out of one way and left turns coming out of the other way. There's going to be some conflicts if those left turns are too close together. But we don't expect hardly any traffic to go left out of our new Chamblee Court. Everybody's going to be going right to go back to 96 to get to where they're going. There's no reason why they would need to turn left to go into what I'd call the meat of the subdivision. So we're asking for the waiver request. We can adjust the inlet that was discussed. All the drainage works. It's a matter of putting in the right amount of piping that'll get us out of that low area to the retention easement, which we're required to have. And so we feel like this will work fine. The developer also would like to address the commission, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Bob Lamb. I'm representing Oakland Developments LLC and my partners Wayne and Kathy Nobles, Mr. Jeremy Tabor. This is certainly not how we designed this subdivision. The reason this 2.5 acres was impacted like it is our original contractor went in and decided he was going to use this area right here to put a big pile of topsoil on. Well, if you're familiar with step systems, they don't like you to put topsoil on top of areas that you're going to have for a step system. So we lost about 2.5 acres off of our original plan due to his mistake. He's no longer employed by us. So it leaves us with this about 2.5 acres that we're trying to figure out what to do with. The utilities are in, the roads are in, they are now paved. All the drainage is in, curbs, water, electricity, everything's ready to go. To try to bring it in off of Mockingbird Lane straight in there would result in probably losing some lots up there. All of you know the requirement for lots in Rutherford County right now and Murfreesboro is extremely high. All these lots are under contract. Some of the builders, quite a few of them, have custom homes already contracted for to go on the lots that they have signed up for and put up earnest money on. So it would just impact them tremendously to have to go in and completely change the subdivision the way it goes. The way this is turning out, like I said, I certainly wouldn't have designed the subdivision this way on the front end. This is trying to make the best of a less desirable situation. If you put the other one back on, the road to the, thank you, Doug. This road right here is Bourne Lane, like in Jason Bourne. Mr. Holston came up with that, I guess. It stubs into this farm here. This area, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's a pretty low area. I don't know if it'll ever be developed or not. We have no plans to do anything with it. We're not contracted for it or anything. So Bourne Lane, being consistent with good planning, we stubbed it into that farm. So in case it ever is developed, it will have access onto our street up here. This is the area in question right here, approximately 2.5 acres, that Mr. Huddleston's been able to figure out how to take care of the drainage and to design it in a way to get about 4 lots out of it. 4 lots is not going to generate hardly any traffic daily count, coming out onto Northside Estates Drive here, Northside Drive, which is this. And as you can see, only makes common sense that people coming out of there for those 4 houses are going to make a right turn going out to the Lascassas Highway to get to wherever they're going, rather than turning left. And I agree, I'm a little familiar with planning, and 150 feet is a good separation for offsetting roads on this, but we're asking for an 11-foot, basically an 11-foot variance in this. We moved it as far as we can possibly move it, and we extending Mockingbird Lane on, like Mr. Hughes. And Mr. Hughes has been very good to work with on this, and he's tried to come up with alternatives. Unfortunately, none of them seem to work for us. This whole request is not due to anything that we did on the front end. It was a mistake by the original contractor, and we're just trying to make the best of a bad situation. By the way, this is not a starter home cookie box subdivision. The plans we've approved so far have all been in the 3,000 and much above square foot range. It's going to be a very nice subdivision. It's not going to be one of these starter home, high density deals that you see coming over all over the county and the city right now. This is a nice upscale subdivision. There's 58 lots in this original section, all of which are under contract. And, we're trying to really put a good product on the road there, on the land there, to provide nice housing for the citizens of Rutherford County and Murfreesboro. So we would ask your indulgence. I respectfully request you approving this 11-foot variance for us on this road. Do you have any questions of me?
Is the step field already installed as well?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And it's the deed is to Jeff Reed. Tom Haynes prepared the deed for it. It's been turned in to Jeff Reed for approval, and it will be deeded to CUD.
The reason that I ask is I just wondered if there was any way to shift that cul-de-sac to the east to line up with the Bourne Lane, so that you've got a
No, ma'am. It would have to cross what's left of the step field now. Yes, ma'am. We, losing this 2.5 acres, we had a large step field plan, which was going to be sufficient for the entire subdivision when it's developed out. Losing this is going to require us to either have less lots in the back and not do a third section, or to find additional soils in the back for another step system. And it's one of those things that we certainly didn't plan it that way.
In the overall build-out, is there a plan for a common area, pool house, or anything that would lend itself to left turns out of that street?
That's a good question, and thank you, Mr. Bogle. No, we didn't. We talked to our builders, and we're selling these lots to local builders. We're not selling them all to a big tract builder from out of state somewhere. These lots are being developed to sell to our local people here so they can build nice houses on it. And In talking to them, most of them, they had some concerns with subdivisions that are built with high HOA fees. And some of our agents, too, feel like high HOA fees is a deterrent sometimes to people buying in subdivisions, as well as liability issues and other things that you get from swimming pools and things like that. So we made the decision not to do any common area assessments in there, which would mean higher HOA fees. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
With this plan, you're netting 4 new lots. One of the suggestions that Mr. Hughes made was that you move the road more to the west to get it to a higher spot to help with drainage. And so my question is, if you're netting 4 new and you're possibly losing what looks like maybe 2, wouldn't you still be netting 2 if you move the road?
Mr. Huddleston, I don't know if we've got that lot under, by moving it, that lot is under contract. And like I said, the utilities are in, drainage in, everything's there ready to go. By designing it this way, we're not having to go back and tell a builder, we can't sell you this lot because we're losing it for this reason. We're not able to use this 2.5 acres, so by adding the 4 lots, we'll help mitigate some of that loss. And like I said, we'll have to go to the extra expense somewhere down the future of adding additional step acreage in the back. So it really just wasn't feasible, Ms. Allen.
Oh, in actuality, you wouldn't lose any lots. The lot 29 and 30 could slide to the west and just have the cul-de-sac come straight up, and you could still get lots around here.
Mr. Hughes, you can see on here that drainage east, you can't do anything with lot 30 as far as moving it to the east. The drainage easement comes in like this. You can see. So
I'm aware of that, but there's ways to pipe, and I'd rather not have a road in this low spot right here, and then the offset with the intersection, because this wasn't designed to flow freely. You've got a inlet that'll be sticking out in the middle. You'll have to either convert that to a manhole and move an inlet back here, but it's just a situation that could be resolved by moving it over to the high. This is a high point right here, and slide the road up through here. These 2 roads can slide to the west, and lot 30 can have this long strip that Doug was saying was going to be a non-buildable lot. But I mean, I'd rather not have to worry about it in the future, but I mean, we can work. We always work with Huddleston well, and they're always good about addressing all our comments. So I mean, we can address this at the construction stage, but it's just seemed like this would be the time to do it before these lots are released for home construction.
Mr. Huddleston and you would have to argue the merits of the engineering side of it. I'm certainly not an engineer. You say the low spot in the road, basically it's just where the water drains to. It's not really a big deal.
This is low point in Northside Drive right here.
Right.
And when the road was slid over to the west a little bit, you've got a curb inlet that's sticking out in the intersection right now. Sorry, it's hard to see this. But that's actually a curb inlet right here where this storm pipe's coming in. So this would have to be converted to some kind of boxed structure, put another inlet back in here, and rework the pavement around here to get it to flow the where it's supposed to on this side.
I'll have to defer to Mr. Huddleston on that, Mr. Hughes. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you guys today. Thank you very much. We're just asking for an 11-foot variance in this, and we hope this subdivision will be an asset to the Lascassas Highway area. We think it will be. Thank you very much.
I'll be brief. Yeah, I understand what Mr. Hughes is saying, and yes, we provide inlets in the intersections. We have to do that all the time, so That's part of draining an intersection. You're always going to have one coming in lower than the street most of the time. You don't usually have it at a high point anyway, so we can take care of that. Absolutely, the drainage-wise, yes, sir. And the buildable lot, we can have it connect to a lot up in one of the new lots. That strip's there because CUD didn't want it as part of their step system property because there's a ditch on it they don't want to maintain.
Doug, how large is that sliver, the non-buildable lot? Show us exactly where it is.
Yeah, Mike's kind of highlighting it there. It's that frontage right there along the, can you see that on the screen? Okay. It's this area right in here. What they could do, and I think this is kind of what Bill was alluding to, is leave this as area as part of the future development, and then they can combine it with a lot over here. That would work. To the east.
Well, that's all CUD lot there. So the CUD lot comes all the way down here.
Yeah, I see. Well, I think there'll be, I mean, Bill seems pretty comfortable that he can address that. I mean, like I said, it doesn't have to be just a huge connection. It can be as a foot. I mean, I'd be happy with that, as long as it's connecting to something. It's not a lot on of its own, because it's not going to meet zoning requirements as it's drawn. Would that be subject to staff comments? Okay. Just want to be sure.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-1014, Northside Estates Phase 1. Other questions?
I think there were a lot of ideas given that may be better than what we see in front of us that would make the county engineer and planning commission a little more comfortable. So I'm going to be voting no.
I'm with Charlotte on this. I was down there, actually, the stub road that goes into Mr. Schaefer's property to the south. Mr. Schaefer called me because he knows I'm on the planning commission. They had cut his fence, and so I was on right in this area last Saturday, and he was concerned because they'd cut his fence and they were putting in a blow-off, and the guys were very nice. Almost the contractor that was working on that part of it was very nice and promised to fix Mr. Schaefer's fence, but that is a low spot right in there, so I'm familiar with the property, so I'm with Charlotte on this. I think we'd be better off to leave, let you guys try to work out something more suitable to Mike. Let Bill and Mike try to work out something.
I don't have a problem with the 11-foot variance at all. I don't see any traffic from those 4 lots coming out and turning left, since there's no pool or anything else down in the back of the subdivision. I don't know how much that street, that little stub street's going to go to this neighborhood next door. It doesn't appear like it would be it's a large tract of land for a big development, and it's not exactly going to be any kind of shortcut coming out and going through this subdivision. And I really don't see the sense in going back and tearing up what's already been installed. I think it's a workable plan. It's up to the engineer, Huddleston, to work out the drainage on this intersection. It sounds like it's doable. I think Doug and Michael both said it's doable. It's just a bit more complicated. So I don't have a problem with it.
Mike, are you comfortable? I mean,
We can make it work. It's just,
I look to you. I mean, you're a county engineer. I mean,
right.
I know you had some concerns, but I mean, make us feel better about this before.
Well, we'll have to tear up some more road to get that drainage to work on that side where they're putting the intersection in. I thought just moving it to a higher spot would alleviate a lot of that and kill several birds with one stone. But I mean, we could do anything. It's just the drainage right there is going to be challenging. But Bill's a good engineer. He can do anything given time.
think the engineering would be fine on it. It's the constructability. It's going to be quite tedious to construct what is designed in this case. So that's my concern with addressing the drainage there.
And to Jim's point, I don't have particular heartburn about the 11 feet there. I don't think that's a huge deal on four or five lots, you know, coming out. But the drainage, and just by chance, I happened to be on it last Saturday. So that I'm a little with Mike here. If we could not mess with the drainage, it'd be better.
Other questions?
I just have one more thing I wanted to add to this. We all know drainage is probably our number one responsibility out of everything that we look at with these plans. And so it's really unfortunate. I mean, it's a good problem to have, I guess, that all these lots are under contract, and it's unfortunate that the timing happened and, the impact from the other contractor. But as I look at this, I think to myself, thank goodness we caught it now. You know what I mean? It's like there's so many times we have a neighborhood that's built out, and then we have neighbors come back and say, oh, you didn't address this or that. And, maybe it was designed properly, but not like Lee said, maybe it wasn't installed properly. I don't know. And so anyway, it just seems to me like this is one of those times where we're able to catch it on the front end before we create a problem. And I just think it would be easier to move that road. They're still going to net 2 lots. I think they could work out something with, the other builder or with, whoever has those other lots. I don't think it's going to put them in. It's unfortunate they're going to have to tear things out they've already put in. I don't like that either, but I just think it's the smarter thing to do to put it to the high spot.
Comments or questions? You guys ready to vote? Mike?
One last question to Michael. Again, the 11-foot is not an issue to me. It doesn't look like there'd be a high rate of speed regardless. You've got multiple turns. It looks like most people will be turning right to get to the main drag, so the 11-foot to me is not an issue. We're not asking water to run uphill, are we, Mike? We're not asking water to run uphill.
No, sir.
Okay. So I guess the real question, and I'm asking for a yes or no, between you and Bill, and granted that they would have to disturb the current road and the subgrade and add some additional piping, but to your satisfaction, can they manipulate the drainage in that low area by additional curb inlets or area drains and piping to satisfy the drainage concern in that low area?
Yes, and we have a requirement that as-built be issued, once it's constructed, to make sure that it's water's flowing in the right direction. We're not trapping water anywhere. So I mean, it's a additional safety that we have on our.
So a yes vote to grant the 11-foot easement with staff comments would still mean that you and Bill would have to hammer this out. Oh, and yes. if you still had issues, would it come back to us, or would it just be, if you said absolutely that Bill and I are at a standstill and
right,
it's not going to work, would it come back to us for another vote?
We do the plans at the construction stage, and if the plans don't meet our design criteria, we don't allow them to move forward with that. So they have to design a plan that'll work, enough cover over the pipe, drainage won't pond in the intersection, all of our requirements. So, and then once it's constructed, we have them go back and do a survey of the roads, the drainage, everything, the lots with fill on them, to make sure that they meet our requirements. And then we can release them for construction.
Okay. So,
of the houses.
All right. So to be clear, if a vote yes would be to allow for the 11-foot request, would allow for staff comments, you and Bill would work out the drainage. You just said you think that can be accomplished, and if not, we would see this again.
Right. Well, at final plat, you would.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question that's unrelated to what we're talking about here. Doug, you and I had talked about when you have extremely long roads in a neighborhood, is there some element that you can use to sort of mitigate it becoming, a high-speed area? So is this road looks extremely long to me. Is this one of those areas that would be appropriate for that, or does the bend in the middle of it suit that? I'm just asking.
Well, I think the bend in the middle does have a traffic calming effect to it. I know some of the roads we were talking about were in some other subdivision where they're just really long straightaways. I dare say even probably longer than this. There are ways to introduce traffic calming techniques into subdivisions. It's probably best looked at, obviously this is a reapproval. These roads, for the most part, at least for the first section, have been installed already. So in that sense, it's maybe a little too late for that, but I think that bend in the road does help with that. Plus, you've got a pretty significant bend on the far west side where it comes off of Highway 96 in that area. That in and of itself right there is going to slow traffic down quite a bit as well.
Other questions? We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-1014, North Side Estates Phase 1. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Opposition? I think the ayes have it, Miguel. We're going to call the roll.
Rhonda Allen? Jim Averwater? Lee Bogle? No. David Jones? Yes. Mike Cush? Yes. Craig Lynch? Yes. Chip Pinion? Yes. Charlotte P? No. Pettis Reed? Yes. Mike Watt? No. Jeff Phillips?
Aye.
Yes, and 4 noes.
Motion to approve carries. Item 6B, submitted for final plat approval. Item 6B1, 17-2045, Maria U. Adams property re-subdivision, 6 lots on 5 acres, zone RM, located off Parsons Road. Maria U. Adams is the applicant. This includes a waiver to the fire hydrant requirements for Lot 1. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a matter of information. When we sent these files out and we had to put them on the SharePoint, the file size was too big, so we had to break it down into 2 different files. The first file was just the preliminary plans. The second file, you'll notice, has the final plats and the site plan. So if you haven't already migrated your way over to the second file, this would be a good time to do so. The Planning Commission approved this 2-lot subdivision back in January of this year. That plat was never recorded. You recall a second plat was submitted to the Planning Commission, which was going to split the originally proposed Lot 2, which was the northern part, between Lot 1, which had frontage along Parsons Road, and then the remainder of the property up toward Dreama Court. They were going to do that into a 5-lot subdivision. That ended up being deferred at the Planning Commission's June 26th meeting, and after discussion with the design engineer on this project, we encouraged them to look at just doing this as one plat, as it didn't make a whole lot of sense to record a 2-lot subdivision just to go back and record a re-subdivision for the larger Lot 2. All that to say, that is what they've done. What you're looking at now is a 6-lot plat. We had several comments on this particular subdivision application. All those comments, from our standpoint, have been addressed. The fire hydrant requirement really is for Lot 1, which is located along Parsons Road. There is not a water line in that area, so there's no potential to have a fire hydrant within 1,000 feet of that particular lot. Now, the remaining lots are close enough to the existing hydrants located up in the Colonial Estates subdivision. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Mike, did you have anything on the drainage? Okay, and Mike didn't have any further comments on that.
Feel more comfortable with this? You're happy?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
Make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-2045 for Maria U. Adams. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B2, 17-2058, the third re-subdivision of Lot 26, Deerfield Stables, 3 lots on 3.19 acres, Zone RM, located off Spike Trail. Lacey Bunch is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant is proposing to subdivide this into 3 lots. The detention pond has been in existence since the subdivision was approved back in 1990 and will be part of Lot 26, subject to the existing stormwater detention agreement, which has been on file for some time. There is a 20-foot easement that has been added. We requested a 20-foot access easement for the detention pond be placed on Lot 26, which the applicant has done. There's an existing barn on Lot 26, which my understanding is has been removed. I don't even think it's even showing on there anymore. That was something else we had some issues with, but that's been taken care of. The applicant has, as my understanding, has contacted CUD about a fire hydrant. Creation of these new lots, they will be required to have a fire hydrant within 1,000 feet of each lot. As I recall, I got a letter from CUD the other day saying that one can be installed in that area. So with that, before this plat will be recorded, they'll have to pay the fees for that, for its installation. So with that, for the most part, other comments have been addressed. They have to provide the datum for the benchmark, and we talked about the fire hydrant. Beyond that, this plan appears to be in good order. Mike,
The detention pond is part of Lot 26 then?
Yes.
Will the regular maintenance of the detention pond fall to Lot 26 as far as mowing and that kind of stuff, or is that, how's that work out?
I mean, there's an existing detention pond agreement that was done. I mean, anything, yeah, it's a recorded document, so whatever is called for in that document will continue to be the case.
Questions?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-2058, the third re-subdivision of Lot 26, Deerfield Stables. Other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B3, 17-2059, re-subdivision of 698 Rooker Road, 3 lots on 3 acres, zoned RM, located off Rooker Road and Rooker Christiana Road. Robert Carl Covert and Rebecca Carol Covert are the applicants. Includes a waiver to the fire hydrant requirements. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant is proposing to subdivide approximately a 3-acre tract into 3 separate lots. Information from CUD indicates that a fire hydrant cannot be supported in this area, and there's a letter in your agenda packets to that effect. They are asking for that waiver, which will necessitate the residential sprinkler systems, as this is a 3-lot subdivision. The existing home will not have to be retrofitted, but the other 2 lots will have to be added. That'll have to be added in as part of the home construction. We have asked the applicant to consider adding minimum pad elevations to lots 1 and 3. The design, or the surveyor, when he responded to the comments, did say that he put lot elevations on there. We can't see where they are on there. That's, I mean, something just probably got a layer that was left off or something. That's relatively a minor issue, I think could be taken care of. Also, they need to show the existing septic soil disposal system on Lot 2. They show the soil area, but we were kind of interested where the tank and all the soil lines were and everything. But beyond that, I mean, the plat in itself is in pretty good order, just a few housekeeping things to be taken care of, and it should be good to go. And we'll be happy to answer any questions. With the waiver, of course.
Questions for staff?
Question, Doug. When you say you asked them to consider minimum pad elevations, does that mean they're not required to?
I'll
It's not in a FEMA flood zone, but it looks like, just from, let me turn on the topography. You've got a little pocket in the corner that could trap water. And then also you've got an extremely flat area right here. The water is trying to flow this direction, but with this fence row, you can likely trap some water in here. I'm just asking them to build up a little bit to protect the house a little better.
So if we approve it subject to staff comments, that's going to be required then?
Flying out, so they...
Yes, sir. No, sir. They'd have to ask the neighbor if they could take some trees out and clear some of that.
Motion to approve, subject to staff comments.
Motion and a second to approve item 17-2059, re-subdivision of lots on 698 Rooker Road. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6B4 has been withdrawn. 6B5, 17-2061, Harvest Woods, Section 2, Phase 2, 16 lots on 9.7 acres zoned RM located off Blue Ridge Drive and Knox Lee Way. Harvest Grove is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thanks. The preliminary plan for this development was approved by the Commission back in July of 2016. This final plat is consistent with that preliminary plan approval. The final plat has a number of layers. The original that was in your agenda materials showed a number of layers that were basically turned on that particular plat that didn't need to be on there. It looked more like a construction drawing than it did a final plat. They've removed all those layers, so we're happy about that. There's a couple layers that are still on there they probably don't have to have, but it's not cluttered like it used to be. It's a lot better. Just a couple of comments we had here. They need to, they added a minimum pad and floor elevation table, and we just want to know what the reason for that is. They just put the pad in the floor. We just want a little reason as to why they're putting that on there. Also, they need to show driveways on constrained lots. They typically, they show a little, like a little notch, I guess. They usually use different symbology for that. It's a little easier to see what it is just looking at it. If you're really looking, you can tell it's what they're doing, but usually we see something a little different than that, just a little easier to see.
Right. Usually you show the driveway back to the minimum building setback line, so you make sure it doesn't interfere with the step easement on those narrow lots.
Right. Right, just like you said, just so make sure nothing is being encroached upon. And on, you see on lot 152, in kind of the lower left corner there, that particular lot's actually not part of the subdivision. It's a previous section, but they're still showing the step details and the tank and everything. And there's no, that's this right in here. I think you can see what Mike was doing too, but there's no reason for that to be on there, as that's not even part of the subdivision. So if they would remove that, that'd be fine. But beyond that, again, those are relatively what I call housekeeping items. So beyond that, this plat appears to be in good order.
It goes to an area a little bit farther south. If I get my map to work for me. Heads towards Cutoff Road. There's a drainage area. Seems to be locking up on me. Right in this area, this is a detention area right in here. No, sir. No, sir. It's got plenty of fall and a lot of large drainage network to get there.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-2061, Harvest Woods, Section 2, Phase 2. Other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B6, 17-2062, Twin Oaks Drive subdivision, 4 lots on 13.28 acres, zone RM, located off Twin Oak Drive. True Craftsman Construction is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the existing tracts, there's 2 of them, into 4. This area does have historic localized flooding issues. I'll let Mike discuss that here in just a moment. One of our main concerns was making sure that these lots would be within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. There is an existing hydrant that will meet that distance requirement located on Lillard Road, so there's no issue there. Most of the other issues that really they had to address from our comments, they have done that, but I'll let Mike provide a little more information about the drainage in that area.
You can see from the lot lines in this Fair Oak Court here, there used to be houses here. These lots were purchased and demolished with FEMA grant money. There was a large flood that occurred. Let me turn on, kind of see it a little bit better with the quad map. But this backs up to Double Springs Cave and Sinkhole right in here. And the yellow are the 2 lots they're wanting to subdivide into 4. The cave is actually back in this area back here. We had them evaluate the area. This is one large bowl, and they've got to build up the pads for these houses above the spillover point, which is on Twin Oak Drive up right in this area right here. So we feel that if they build the pads up high enough and stay out of this cave sinkhole area and just preserve it as a conservation area, we should be okay with this. It builds up and spills over in this area right in here. If it can't go in the cave, this whole area, like I said, is a large bowl. If I could show you on the that may be easier with the quad maps. This is like a 600 contour, 610 contour, and then we had them raise the pads up to around 611. But it would build up and spill over and go through here, over the road here.
Mike, so the lots that flooded, would they be buildable lots if they built their pad elevation up as well?
Well, that was one of the stipulations of the FEMA grant, that they never be built on again. So, I mean, if FEMA hadn't bought them out, you could raise the road, the pads up to make them workable. But right now, they're on the inside rim of this large bowl. You'd have to build the pad up above the spillover elevation. But being FEMA money, they won't allow us to do that.
Will we define what the building envelope will be on these other lots so that they stay in the area you want them to be in?
The FEMA lots or the lots in question?
The lots we're looking at now.
Yes, I'll show you. This whole area in the back is a conservation area. They've just excluded it from any building at all. The hatched area is the soils, and they've shown a couple house locations, but they've also shown the pad elevations on each one of the lots that will have to be built up. And I think we required these to be critical lots as well. If not, we can make that requirement that they be critical lots. Typically, that's what happens when you're building near flood zone, sinkholes, anything like that. We require that they be critical lots. We'll make that a stipulation as well. So each lot will have an individual lot grading plan.
Now, Mike, establishing a minimum pad elevation of 611 based on the spillover.
Right.
Typically, if it's a FEMA elevation, like near a creek or something, we would build the actual floor elevation of the house 3 feet above that 610 level for a little extra padding. Does that 3 feet also play into the equation when this is a locally established pad elevation?
Typically for localized drainage, as long as we can get the pad up over the spillover elevation, the house, and even if it's a slab, should be protected from flooded, localized flooded.
Now, FEMA sometimes goes back and raises their minimum pad elevations, or essentially the floodplain, which raises the minimum pad elevations and
Yes,
all
sir.
that. Do we have to be concerned at some point in the future, things changing, runoff is increased, and now these houses will be in danger of flooding?
Yes, sir. If I had a crystal ball, I'd won the lottery a long time ago, but we have to use the best available information we have right now. But right now, this whole area is a bowl, and we had them evaluate, well, when this bowl fills up, this cave can't take any more water, or water's pumping out of the cave, where does that water go? So we had them evaluate, and they determined a spillover elevation right in here that is the lip of the bowl. And building the pads up a foot above that would allow the houses to be protected. So, like I said, I was telling Ms. Allen that we can require that these be individual lot grading plans, so we'll look at each individual lot as a house is being proposed on each one. It goes to the northwest. Yes, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're saying.
So Mike, is that area of spillover so narrow as to be in danger of becoming so overwhelmed that it can't stay below that 611 mark?
So overwhelmed.
In other words, is that just a narrow spot, a narrow low place in the road?
It's a real wide. You can see this is a 612 elevation, this is a 612, and then there's 610 on either side of the road. So it's a long, flat area right here. It's just a biscuit above 610, so the water would build up, spill over the rim of the bowl, and then head to the northwest.
What did you say the road was?
Right around 610 and a little bit above.
So it actually still up the road before that?
Yes.
On every requirement of the plan?
Yes, sir. Right. And then it will most likely hop into other sinkholes and leapfrog to the northwest to the creek.
When did FEMA purchase the other 2010?
No, sir, I think it was before that. I think it was, let's see, if they were there in '07, I think it was, if I can get the, this is imagery from '07. They're gone. The houses are there in '06, so sometime between '06 and '07. Yes, sir, right. These houses flooded severely in a localized storm event that I think these people had to be rescued, from what I've been told.
It's a little bit of chasing the rabbit. Does FEMA own the lots now?
It's the county owns the lots, but it was used with FEMA money, and there are stipulations that you can never build on them again.
Did the county sell the lots on the street?
I doubt it. I doubt it very seriously. I'd have to look into that, but
Those upper two lots are shown.
of the three. Well, actually, all of these, I think, are round. Let me go back to current topo. I think that they're all gone. All around there, there's like 6 of them, or yeah.
You know when that neighborhood was designed?
Let's see, we can pull that up. It has a project number of 91. 91, 89, so late 80s, early 90s. And then looks like the flood happened in 06, something around there.
The elevation on those lots?
There's an 06 contour, 06, 06. That's an 08. So it probably, if it got up into here, it maybe got up to 07, 607, 608, something like that. And then you can see more of the cave, sinkhole topography back in here.
Doug, Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure I'm not out of line here. You're establishing a minimum pad elevation of 611. Is it possible also to establish a minimum floor elevation in addition? Because this is obviously a critical situation. I just don't want to see those people, their personal property flooded out. You know, it's one thing the yard flooding out, getting water on it, but when it gets up and comes over the thresholds, that's pretty devastating. Is it possible to put a floor elevation also? And all that requires is them to do is do a crawl space foundation instead of a slab foundation. So it's not like it's a
that happens
catastrophe.
a lot. We can set minimum pad, minimum floor, and just say due to localized drainage issues, it's the reason for these. Historically, we would set minimum pad, minimum floor because of a FEMA requirement, but we've been setting minimum pad, minimum floor for localized flooding since I've been here.
And Mr. Chair, as a point of order here, can I make a motion to approve, subject to staff comments, with a minimum floor elevation 1 foot above the minimum pad elevation? Do you feel that's sufficient? Mike?
Do 2 more like the FEMA, just to mirror the FEMA.
That'd give us an extra margin of error, yeah. Make it conform to the FEMA standards of 2 foot above the pad elevation, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you couldn't do a crawl space there. You could do a slab, maybe, but.
It's just a minimum. And when the FEMA sets the minimum floor, that's to help bring the HVA system up above the pad, to make sure it's above that to protect it as well.
Yes, I'm going to put that in the form of a motion. I make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments, and adding as one of the requirements a minimum floor elevation of 2 feet above the pad elevation of 611.
Have a second? We did. Okay, thank you. Doug, did the staff have a recommendation on this?
Yeah, we're fine. It's approval with those comments. It's fine.
Other questions? We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-2062, Twin Oaks Drive subdivision. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Is there opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6C, submitted for site plan approval, 6C1 item 17-3028, Davenport Station subdivision amenities area, new construction of a pool house with bathrooms and storage, pool and parking area on Lot 124 of Davenport Station, Zone PUD, located off Bow Meadows Drive, BMCH, Tennessee, is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. You'll recall the preliminary plan for this PUD was considered and approved earlier on the agenda. The site plan that was submitted originally needed to be updated with all the site data information. It looks like what they had done was copy and pasted all the subdivision information on the site data, which we needed really more specific for this particular project. They have done that, and we have looked that over along with the other comments that we had. They've pretty much addressed all the comments that we've asked them to address. There is one item that they do need to amend. This was something that they actually said they amended, but as it turned out, it just needs to be changed. On the details page, which is page C3.0, the parking lot pavement section, they're not going to use tar and chip like they said they were going to originally. They are going to use a typical pavement as opposed to tar and chip, but they still show that tar and chip detail. They just need to change that out. We talked to the design engineer about it prior to the meeting, and he was surprised it was still there, so he'll take care of that. But beyond that, all of our other comments have been addressed, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-3028, Davenport Station subdivision amenities area. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Doug, any reports?
No, sir. Mike, did you have anything? No, we're good.
Let me ask Doug if you can give us some clarification on item 6A3, the north side estates, where we had a 7-4 vote. That was a preliminary plan.
Correct.
So what happens in the final plan? If staff still has heartburn with what's submitted then, this commission gets another shot?
Yes, you would get another shot at it. And we explained why we feel that it needs to be a certain way. And of course, kind of like today, the applicant would be present. If they didn't agree with staff's recommendation on that, they could present their case, and then we just have deliberation from there. Of course, we try to work out as much as that prior to the commission meeting as we can, but there are times like today where, for various reasons, the applicant and staff just won't necessarily agree on what the best course of action is, and that's really what this body's for at that point.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September the 11th, 6 p.m. here in this courthouse. Any other questions? Thank you. We're adjourned.